From time immemorial, the sovereign nations have inhabited, protected, and preserved the land that is so-called Canada. We acknowledge this fact. The land we serve is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, and the Chippewa. Reelworld's offices are in Toronto, which is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sharon Hines, and I'm the Rogers Sports and Media All-In Manager. My pronouns are she and her. Here at Rogers, we're committed to making actionable, positive change within our societies. The All-In Initiative is an action-focused inclusion and diversity initiative, which is built on 5 pillars: business, community, content, mentorship and sponsorship, and hiring and career advancement practices. The framework empowers and amplifies the impactful work of equity-deserving charities and small businesses and complements the overall Rogers Communications Inclusion and Diversity strategy. Back in 2020, Reelworld Film Festival was one of our first partners who we supported with our media megaphone. Special thank you to Robin Mirsky, Executive Director for Rogers Group of Funds. We're incredibly proud to partner with Reelworld and congratulate them on the 22nd Reelworld Film Festival. It's initiatives like this. It's initiatives like this, driven by Reelworld, that help to ensure that we can all experience even more rich, authentic storytelling from diverse Canadian creatives, offering new voices and perspectives. It's great to always work and support Tanya Williams and her team. It is an honor for me now to introduce my friend, cohort, the moderator for today's panel discussion, sponsored again by Rogers Group of Funds. Fennella Bruce, media consultant and founder of FKB Media. Fenella's television career began as an editorial assistant for CTV National News. Shortly after, she was hired as a writer for CTV's Breakfast Television and quickly moved up the ranks to become a writer for City News, and then senior writer and finally producer of several shows. At the time, she was the first Black woman news producer at CTV, a handful in the city. Fennella just received the award. It's the Businesswoman of the Year award. Congratulations, Fennella. I will now hand you over to Fennella Bruce. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you so much, Sharon, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's feeling well this morning. Your belly is full, you're feeling good, you're ready to learn and hear this morning from our esteemed panel. Sharon's introduction is just a part of my career at this point. I have been running my own media consulting company for the last 4 years, and last year I started my own production company, FKB Media Productions, Inc. And I am also now a filmmaker, like many of you in the room. So I'm doing my first documentary, and I'm very excited to hear about this panel because I'll be taking my own notes and hopefully learning from it. I actually just went through TIFF and Content Canada and a gazillion pitches for my doc, and I participated in the big pitch at TIFF with Caribbean Tales, and I placed second. So I was very, thank you. I was very happy about that because it was hard condensing your idea, your great big idea, into 3 minutes and getting that across. And so that was a fabulous experience. Now I don't know that I want to do it again, but it was a great experience. And now I'm in the application funding process. So I'm with you guys. We're all family here. There are no silly questions. There's different levels that everybody's at. So I want everyone to feel comfortable to ask questions. I'm hoping that I'll ask some of the questions for you in my moderating, but we will have a Q&A at the end. So please get your questions ready so that you can also participate this morning. So I would like to welcome our panelists to the stage. We have Robin Mirsky, Executive Director of Rogers Group of Fund, John Taylor, CEO of Independent Production Fund, and Suzanne Lacey, Deputy Director, English Canada Bell Fund. And once they get settled in and their mic's on, they're going to do their own little intro about themselves, and then we'll get the questions going. So we'll start with you, Suzanne, if you can just give everybody a little background on who you are.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Suzanne Lacey, and I am Deputy Director, as you just heard, of Bell Fund for English Canada. Do you want to say a little bit about Bell Fund at this point?
No, I'll ask you about it. Just about yourself.
Oh, just about myself. I wasn't prepared to that. Let me see. I was born, no. Yeah, I've been in the business a long time, started as a PA, working on commercials and music videos in Toronto. I worked at TVO for a long time. I was the director of multi-platform content and the broadcast schedule at TVO for a very long time before going to the Bell Fund about 7 years ago. Yeah, so that's a bit about me.
Okay, thanks. John?
Yeah, it's John. Who here was at the big pitch for Fenella's pitch? Thank you. I was tempted to start with this is a showdown, throwdown, but I'll stop.
No, my rap career, that was the end of my rap career. By the way, for those who haven't guessed, my documentary is about Maestro Fresh West.
It's looking very good. I saw the pitch. It was a tight pitch. Very good.
Thank you.
You're good at that. You should do it more often.
Are you going to keep going with that?
No, I can't. I don't know. It's a famous first line. She's right. Everyone knows that line. Anyway, so I'm the CEO of the Independent Production Fund. I started as an editor a long time ago for Factual, which is ironic because the Independent Production Fund does scripted. So I was at Discovery Channel. I also went through news. I was a producer of features at news. I ended up being the head of digital at Bell Media, and I launched that department. Crave was my product when it launched, so I led the launch of that. I have a bit of a tech background, so I have content strategy, technical. I've worked at e-commerce companies, some internet marketing companies in the last 5 years. I headed up an organization called the Global Online Video Association, which was when MCNs were a thing. So this is like the Maker Studios and Machinima, et cetera. There was the lobbying group in the US based out of LA. So I had that up for a bit, which was a great learning lesson in how when there isn't the funding system existing, how flexible you got to be with your business in the US. So a lot of those companies were built on that. And then I chose to join the Independent Production Fund because I was really excited about the possibility of working with emerging producers and our products, which you'll hear more about, which cater towards web series and smaller producers is a really great entry-level, low barrier way to get your career started. And we'll talk more about that, but excited to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then last but not least, Robin.
So my name is Robin Mirsky. I'm Executive Director of the Rogers Group of Funds. I have worked in various aspects of the business for about 35 years. I've been at Rogers for all of it, actually. Started at YTV as a summer student. We got the CRTC license for the YTV channel and was there in programming for a year and a half and always knew I wanted to come back to Rogers. And I came back almost 34 years ago, and I started managing one fund, built that into three, and here I am today.
Thanks, Robin. So let's get started with a bit about your programs. I'm going to start with you, Suzanne. The two programs for the Bell Fund that are best suited for this group today are the Slate Development Fund and the short form digital series, right? So for those who didn't have a chance to review it, we did have it on the Eventbrite, but in case, can you just give a brief overview about them?
Yeah, for sure. So The slate development program, there is a deadline coming up for that one on November 28th, so I'll talk more about that. But basically, slate development is an opportunity for you as a producer, for your production company, to ask for development support, so a particular phase of development, because development can go on forever, as we know, for 2 or 3 of your projects. And the funding would be $25,000 max per project. So maximum $75,000 would be the ask for slate for up to 3 projects. Now there are webinars and application clinics that yours truly recorded and put on our website. So you can check those out if you didn't have an opportunity to participate in that yet. If you're interested in November, it's getting a bit late, but if you are interested in applying for slate development, check out the website, the webinar, the application clinic, and get in touch with us to let us know your interest, because it is mandatory to attend those. So if you missed them, then get in touch with us and we can talk. In terms of the short form digital series program, yeah, great program. We launched this in 2017, again, to support those voices that weren't being seen on traditional television. That was really the purpose of the short form digital series program. It has both a fiction and a nonfiction component. It can be any season of your series as well. So if you've already launched a season on YouTube or something and you want to ask for funding for a season 2, that's fine. We usually have 2 deadlines, so spring and fall 2023 you'd be gearing up for. And again, there's a webinar and an application clinic on our site for those. That all pertains to 2022, and we like to keep you guys on your toes and change up the guidelines a little bit each year. So if you're interested in short form digital series, what John calls web series, then just make sure you check out the 2023 guidelines when they're ready. But those are the 2 series that are probably most relevant for you guys.
And with the short form, is it required that you do the webinar and as well?
Yeah, I think we do say that. And the purpose of that is, of course, we want you guys to create strong applications. So we want you to watch the webinar, read the guidelines. We want you to participate in an application clinic. It's a virtual room of like 25 people, and you get a chance to interact with each other and ask questions. And it's all with the intent of helping you create strong applications. Because as somebody mentioned earlier, they can be, you mentioned.
I think it was me.
Nightmare. I think nightmare was the word you used.
Nightmare, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'd all agree on that. And it's super confusing, the landscape. So yeah, it is required. But, again, like these guys, we're a small fund, and you can always reach out to us and we will talk to you. So if you miss your chance to participate, just get in touch and talk to us. And I'm sure we can figure something out.
That's fabulous. So John, tell us about the 2 programs under the IPF. So I think it's a short form series, right? Is one of them.
Yeah.
And why would it apply to creators in this room? Like, what makes it a good starting point for filmmakers?
Yeah, no problem. We have 3 deadlines, 2 programs. The first one's kind of 1A and 1B. So it's the web series, digital series, short form series. We're also dysfunctional about what to call it, but it means the episode lengths are less than 20 minutes. The whole point of that is to exclude television. So because there's tons of opportunity to get funding in Canada for television, we wanted to isolate that, and we don't want this particular money to just be completing the 0.5% of a large television show, so we wanted to hold it in a separate bucket. And so there's 2 parts to that. One is we were the very first fund in 2010 to launch this web series funding for production. Fast forward 10 years in 2020, we realized that there was interest in development, and you could see some of the broadcasters were giving some development money out, and those pitches actually had a really, really strong push forward when they're applying for production. Also, there's a lot more places to get production funding, like Bell Fund, CMF does second season, et cetera. So the landscape had changed a lot. Ontario Creates, for folks from Ontario, are an opportunity. So we realized that we could actually back some of our money up. We're a small fund, so we're always looking for how we can make the most impact with our dollars. So we created a development fund for web series, and it's currently the only one in Canada. And so it's $30,000 for you to write scripts, create your Bible, hire a bit of a writing team, potentially hire some production management staff to help you with the budget, et cetera. So it's a really good ground level point. You have to be a little bit further along, but you can't be to the point that you've shot your trailer yet, etc. But you've got your concept and you're just about to go to that point. It was amazing when we would see people apply for our production fund, what they pulled off, beg, borrowing, and stealing, and using their own money and shooting trailers on iPhones. It was incredible what people will apply with, but when you have some money to actually help you develop, your application is much stronger. We do still do production funding. The reason I call that 1B is because you have to have come through our development program to be eligible to apply. So it's basically one big program with 2 deadlines. The other fund, the other program we run is Cogeco. So the Independent Production Fund administers the Cogeco Fund, which is a television fund, a straightforward drama. We're looking for primetime shows, etc. So if you're familiar, all of the major shows that come through in Canada are often in part funded by Cogeco as well. So we administer that one as well.
And how much is that fund, the Cogeco one?
How much each year?
Yeah.
I mean, it changes each year. It depends on incomes, but it's a couple $1 million, basically, $1.5 million to $2 million. And then our other is $30,000 per and up to $200,000 maximum per program in the production fund. Make sense?
Yep, it makes sense. And we were talking about people sort of the short form web, whatever you want to call it, as a good starting point, right?
We should complete today aligning on what to call them.
Let's name it.
Just do me a favor, and I won't leave until we've all aligned. That's going to be it.
Sometimes to sort of test market your project, right?
Yeah.
It's a good way.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the measurement of success on these products because, I mean, the initial. We were looking at very traditional measures of success like commercial viability. So did it get an international sale? Did it get some sort of stream or a platform license? But since I've been here the last couple of years, I think we really are starting to redefine what success means because getting commercial success is not, in many cases, not the primary objective of a web series. The web series is there's IP creation, you're doing career boost, maybe you were in a writer's room and now you're the head writer of your own project, you get creative control of your project. Even just it getting made and you have the credit now as producer writer, and sometimes that IP becomes valuable as something else, as a subsequent work, as a TV show, etc. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways to look at success of a web series, but it's a lower barrier way to get something made and put yourself in the driver's seat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Issa Rae did it. I mean, so there's something to it. So Robin, can you give us a quick overview of the 3 funds available through the Rogers Group of Funding?
Sure. So the first one would be the Rogers Documentary Fund, which is a grant program for documentaries that have been pre-sold to either a national Canadian broadcaster or a platform that is available to Canadian audiences. So it doesn't have to be a Canadian platform, but it has to be available in Canada. So Netflix would qualify because it's available to Canadian viewers. Hulu would not because it's not available in Canada. So that is a grant program. You can apply for a grant of up to $100,000. It's for feature-length and hour-long TV films. It's very competitive. We have 2 deadlines a year, and we have funded through that program over 1,000 films in about, almost 28 years. Again, we have a website and a portal where you can get all the information. We try and make our application process as simple as possible, but it's not always possible. So we're always available to speak to you. I have a very small team, but I would suggest you go to the website, look at our guidelines, and then come to us with questions. The second fund is something called the Rogers Cable Network Fund, and that we created about 22 years ago to support cable channel programming. At the time, that was where the growth in the industry was. I think it's changed a little, but it's still somewhat relevant today. So it's an equity program where we make equity investments. It's risk money in projects that either have a first play on a Canadian cable channel or a simultaneous play between a cable channel and a conventional broadcaster. So we're looking at all genres of programming. We do documentary features, we do unscripted series, we do drama series, we do kids, anything for that specialty channel market. You could apply for 20% of your budget up to a maximum of $500,000. It's also a very, very competitive process. We only have about $5 or $5.5 million a year for that program. Our money comes from a percentage of cable revenues. And so I would urge you all to get cable so that our revenues continue to go up, because right now it's a problem. That's where all the CIPFs, the Certified Independent Production Fund, get their money, or cable revenues. So that, as I said, that's equity investment. We look at return on investment for that fund. We look at it very seriously, because what we're trying to do is keep our funding levels at a certain amount. So as cable revenues go down, we're able to replace it with our return on revenue. So we look very seriously at what is our potential to return. What's the international market going to look like for a project like this, et cetera, et cetera. It's, all the funds are really looking at the same thing right now, because revenues are important. They go right back into the fund so that we can fund other projects. Our last fund, which is the oldest fund, is something called the Rogers Telefund. It's a little bit different. It's a financial services fund, and we offer interim financing to projects that are fully financed. So you'll find when you finance your projects that you have tax credits and CMF and a license fee and maybe one of the private funds, but a lot of that money is payable at delivery or even afterwards. So we look at those deals. We offer loans at rates that are more competitive than financial institutions. So we offer loans to cash flow your production. And then what we do is we take an assignment of those third-party payments, like a tax credit, like a broadcaster commitment. We give you the money up front, and then we wait to get that money to get that money back when it's payable. So it's real. It's not seed money, or it's real. It's a interim financing. It's a loan. We don't charge a setup fee. Our interest rates are more than competitive. And it's something you'll find when you have a fully financed project and you have huge holes in your cash flow. You'll find you're going to need to knock on our door or a bank store, but we're generally easier to access than commercial lenders.
Thanks, Robin. I think those are all three great funds for various reasons. I think the last one especially, people don't think about that. That financing that they may need to not even just complete, to just start their project if they don't get the money up front. So that's a good one to keep in your back pocket when you're putting together your financial plan. So now that we know what funding is available, it's time to apply. I know I feel a lot of anxiety. I felt it yesterday when I opened up an email from Telephone about a fund that I applied for, and I start reading what else is needed and the guidelines and the forms that are there, and they're on the funding sites. John, what's your best advice that you can give to people when they're approaching the application process? Besides deep breaths.
Stay calm, deep breaths. Yeah, no, it's so for us, we've seen. I think probably we all talk about reading the guidelines, and that does sound like just a kind of pedantic thing to say, but it's very true. You should totally read it. You should totally download it. Probably read it twice because it's kind of dense in many ways. So there is this devil in the details thing, and in the push to a deadline. And there's the saying, if it wasn't for the 11th hour, nothing would get done. And so it's inevitably true, possibly human nature, that we always just keep leaving things that are hard to the last minute. If you could break that cycle, you could see that success. So however your technique is to give yourself a fake deadline to, like, I'm going to have it done on this day and pretend this is the real deadline, you will thank yourself for having 5 more days to clean it, polish it. You'll realize the holes you have, and you don't want to have that feeling at 11 o'clock at night on the day of a deadline at midnight and you're submitting. And I have submitted to funds in the past. It is a lot of detail and work. Often you're working with a team, so you divide, conquer your stuff. So that devil in the detail extends across your whole pitch, which means if you've got one person working on one thing, another person on that, and you all sort of come together in the end, if it doesn't coalesce and you've got sort of dream statements over here in your pitch document, but your budget really doesn't reflect that. And it sounds obvious, but it comes up. You will see that we've got interest from AKA celeb, blah, 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 but your budget has no mention of how that celeb's getting paid. Or even if they volunteer their time, they put a letter in that says, by the way, they don't need to get paid, because the jury, the evaluators are experts. They look at hundreds and thousands over years, and they know they're looking for how the budget connects to the creative. Feasibility is this piece that is kind of this undercurrent of any application. Can it be pulled off? So if you're a new team and you're new people, bringing in one person or two people in key positions that have some credits that help you in those weak spots, that helps build up confidence around the feasibility. And all these little details, even just down to grammar, like just spelling, it's really dumb. Everything is like they've said, it's very competitive. We get hundreds of applications for 20 successful applicants. It may come down to that pitch felt sloppy, like great pitch, great team, budget looks good, sloppiness versus organized and feeling stable, that the indication may be that the production will be sloppy and something will fall through and a partnership document won't be perfect. So the devil really is in the detail and connecting the dots across all your documents, and that really is give yourself the time you need.
I just want to add, you're absolutely right, because I have a board of directors and we look at everything, and your application is usually the only impression our board will have of who you are and what you are. And if it's not strong, if there are things missing, or there are holes, or there are spelling mistakes, or you're putting in different documents that don't add up to your budget, that's our only impression of you, and it's got to be right. So in our case, we have a portal that we just launched. It drives me crazy, but apparently people like it. And you can start an application and you can save it and you can leave it in draft and come back to it, so that you don't have to finish it all at once and submit it. So you can keep coming back to it. So over the course of a week or 10 days, make sure it's perfect, because that's our only impression of you. And when we're looking at 60 applications and we can fund 15 projects, every detail matters.
Yeah, and that was going to be my advice as well. Like, I think I'm from the school of, you do it, take a few days, go back and look at it, because you can look at something 10 million times and not see that spelling mistake. And it's the 11th time that you'll see it on the page. So, give yourself time. Don't start the day before. That's a bad formula. Give yourself time and then let it breathe, then go back and read it over and have someone else read it over. Suzanne, anything you want to chime in on that? And what are the most common mistakes you see in applications?
So, that's enough. I'll just talk to myself. So yeah, as John was saying, in terms of taking your time, I would say for Bell Fund, for both the Slate Development Program and for the Short Form Digital Series Program, you need, at least in 2022, you need market partners for development, and you need your digital channel established for the Short Form Digital Series Program. I think this is a little more stringent maybe than IPF. You guys, as you say, you have your development avenue that you go through to production. We require those things at application, and that takes time. That's the piece that, it's what you guys are doing. It's talking with people, it's reaching out to people in the industry, broadcasters, digital channels, distributors, getting somebody who loves your team, your project, getting somebody on your side who wants to either sign a letter saying they'd love to go through development with you, or they'd love for your show to stream on their digital channel. So that is the kind of thing that takes time, and you need that established before you can apply. So do spend time doing that piece early on, so that in the lead up, when you're doing your detailed budget and everything else, at least you've established those relationships. And it's also great for your project, because you want to reach out to people who have similar content to yours, obviously, right? So you want to find those channels, those distributors, see the content out there that's like yours, and reach out to those individuals to make that connection. In terms of mistakes, a few things, like don't try and do it all on your own. we are all giving money so you can make a professional project. So we want to see you use that money to bring on teams that can do a great job. Right, so don't try, it will backfire. Don't think, oh, I'm gonna do it super cheap and they're gonna love me because I'm only asking for a small amount. It'll backfire because people wanna see premium content, or as premium as you can get for the program. So don't do it all on your own. Do read the assessment criteria for all of our programs so you can see how the jury will score your project. And last, as these guys have said, be super succinct, clear. Make sure if you mention in your production schedule 2 weeks of shooting, that your budget doesn't have 3 weeks. It'll drive the jury crazy. And it'll speak to that feasibility piece again. It'll drop your feasibility score because they're going to feel like you don't have all your ducks in a row, so to speak.
Succinct
Just do all that.
Succinct is a really important one, because a common mistake we'll see is where people put too much, and it seems like maybe it's instinctual to go, I want to give more to the evaluators so they have more to chew on, but brevity, the perfect pitch, those perfect applications totally tell all, they've filled you with confidence, they've got all these right pieces in place, everything, all the dots are connected, and it was succinct, like it just nailed it, which, like a perfect pitch, you have this 3 minutes to nail it. You have an application has a similar vibe to it, where if you hit it, you hit everything right and it's not verbose. It just feels like these people know what they're doing and they know what they're saying, and all the words have meaning on the page. And maybe the reverse of that, just some people, sometimes they don't take every opportunity to, we have one thing that's just called the one-page concept. And we do get emails asking, like, what am I supposed to do with this? Because it doesn't have a definition. And so the people who use that the best is they take that as an opportunity to, maybe it doesn't fit the bucket of budget, it doesn't fit the bucket of, a script, or Bible, etc. But it's your opportunity to explain the why. So there's some sort of why now, why me, why us, what is some piece of context the jury needs, be succinct. It should be relevant, it's not fluff, but if there is some why that they need to know, you take the opportunity with that sheet. And we'll see some people that don't take all the little pieces or opportunity, or they don't attach that extra piece that they should have. The reverse is also true. You can totally be too verbose. So be succinct, but maximize every opportunity to show yourself to the jury.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to pick up on two things that you said, Suzanne, in terms of your budget. And one of the things that people think is that, I'm going to make it really cheap and that will be great. But what you always also want to do, and I find people do this, is remember to pay yourself, right? And put that line in there, right? And don't think, okay, I'm going to make the budget less by not paying the producer, which is you, right? And so keep that in mind when you're doing your application. But the other part you talked about was the criteria assessment. And maybe, Robin, you can speak to that, because I think people overlook that as well. Like they just, read through it and don't really pay attention to that. But it's something that they really need to be doing.
So we list in our guidelines, what are the factors for success? How can you have a successful application? And they're pretty general, but for the documentary fund, it would be things like, who's your end user? Are they putting in a substantial license fee? Are they going to market it? Do they want your film? Will it sell internationally? I think in the case of documentary, film festivals are the best thing to happen to documentaries. They can change the trajectory of a film. And so if you think it will have a long festival life, that's great. The feasibility, we always ask producers to apply for what they need, not what they think they'll get. Because if I look at a financial structure and I think it's weak and they're only asking me for $25,000 because they think that's all they'll get, but they really need $100, it's problematic for me because because you don't have the money to make your film. Am I answering the question?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I mean, I think definitely, and I think maybe the point I was also trying to make was that I think people don't take that as seriously as they should, right? That the answer is right there in front of you when you're applying. Yeah. Right, of what you need.
Well, exactly, and we call it factors for success, and it's by no means is it a secret formula and is it a guarantee, because it's a very competitive process. You know, we're usually at about 40% approval rate, which is not terrible. But as I said, you know, cable revenues are dropping, and it's becoming harder and harder for us to keep those numbers up. But yeah, look very seriously at that. The other thing I would suggest producers do is, so every year we put in a pretty comprehensive annual report, and it's on our website. And I always encourage producers to go back and look at what we funded in the past, so they get an idea for sort of what makes my board tick, what they respond to, that sort of thing.
Definitely. I'll come back to that in a minute. But John, you mentioned sort of the idea of that some people break up the application process with their team members. What are the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, the pros are a team. Collaborative work is stronger. Creative work, there's a lot of both creative and operations are better as a team. This is a team industry and a team business, and when you make your project, it's going to be as a team, and the application is the same. So you're bringing your team together. You can do it yourself. There is also success can be had. It's not a guarantee, and it's not necessary by getting a grant writer. So there are professional grant writers out there that help. They can't take a project that doesn't quite have all the pieces together and make it win, but they do take care of all those pieces that we've talked about, like that perfect grammar and knowing how to be succinct and editing, etc. But there's the pros are you get the strength of a team. The cons are what I was trying to describe before, is someone has to be the lead and make sure that they're doing that final read, and 3 days later they're reading it again, and 3 days later they're reading it again, to make sure that it's succinct. And think of your mind as a jury and thinking, does this make sense? Do I feel confidence if I was asking for this money? One comment I would add to what Robin said, it actually is a very common mistake to ask for too little money. I don't know if it's a common mistake, but it does come up. It's not a benefit if you ask for less money. That does not make you a more attractive application just because you're sort of coming in under what you think other people are. If it's the appropriate amount of money for your project, great, and the jury will recognize it, and your project and your budget makes sense. But if you come in 20,000 under everyone else, but your project doesn't, you needed 20 or 30,000 more, then you're not going to be successful, because you're trying to fit in what you think we'll get. You have to put your best foot forward and ask for the money. Go for the money.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, well, you also see budgets that are outrageously too big, and then it becomes a risk of financing because they're trying to get so much money, and knowing how the industry works, they have to have every domino fall perfectly for you to get that project. That does happen. Some projects are there. They probably have a little bit more of established producers attached, and you can see they have a track record of pulling in financing for projects that big, but that can also be a problem. But yeah, it is at least a couple of projects a year come in and we go, they were close, they should have asked for more money. Like, why didn't the jury saying, like, I don't feel confident, they probably short about 50 grand or something, you know.
Right.
And can I just add a point to that? Yeah, there's also another piece, which is, and especially for folks who are emerging, because we support both scripted and unscripted short form digital series. Sometimes, it's less expensive to make a nonfiction show, be it doc series, some other type of nonfiction show, and sometimes they can be done at a lower price point, but you don't want it to look like you're missing an element. But if you can show that you can produce premium quality content at a lower price point, and that's the format of your show and it works for you, then it's possible. And as John said, sometimes you get those huge budgets. It requires that you ask for funding from 2 or 3 funds, and then you're at risk of maybe everything falling apart if you don't get all your financing. So it isn't a bad idea to, if you're in a position where you can apply with a lower budget, not a tiny budget, but lower budget nonfiction series with fewer financial risks, because you don't need financing from many sources, and that's not a bad thing to consider as well.
Robin?
Be very careful when you're applying if you're relying on 5 or 10 different financial sources. You can only apply to our funds twice. So if you are waiting on a ton of financing and all you have is your license fee and your tax credits, and you're waiting for pre-sales or a distributor or 4 or 5 other financial sources to kick in, I wouldn't always recommend. I would recommend you call me and give me the lowdown, because I would probably recommend that you not waste one of your one chances when your financing is that premature, because you can only apply twice. So be very careful about when you apply and how much is missing, because we will tend to, if we're looking at different projects, we'll tend to finance the ones that are ready to go or that can't come back because they're going to camera, or there's an event that's happening and they have to go and shoot. So it's also a timing thing for your financial structure and for your production schedule, because you can only apply twice. So there is a fine line, and if that was ever an issue, I would suggest that you call me and we could walk through it, and I would tell you now is a good time, or wait till the fall, or whatever.
And coming back to advice to look at what was approved before, are there certain types of, let's just talk about the documentary space, that are more appealing, or themes that the fund is interested in?
So basically, because we're driven by the marketplace. The marketplace has to you're pre-selling your project to a marketplace. What we love is really what the market likes. We tend to fund a lot of different projects, but really the market dictates to us what's popular, what will sell. But there's certain themes in what we fund. We've funded a ton of projects from Indigenous filmmakers. We've done a lot of films on the environment, because that's what people want to watch. So.
And what about web series, John? What are some of the successful projects that have been approved by the IPF?
Okay, well, before I name projects, and like these guys, our site has, you should go and look at what was funded in the past, and those trailers are all there, and the lists of contact companies, etc. I think any one of our alumni would be happy for cold calls from new people and to help answer questions. It's amazing to me how sometimes it's like, oh, we're competing for the same money and we're competitors, but actually when you start talking, kind of everyone's in this together, and we're one big community, and you join each other's crews, etc. So to talk about success in projects is to talk about our success criterias. And so, the first and foremost, and we do recoup, we're an equity investor, which means we are hoping for success commercially. We understand, of course, that we're often the first one in. We're betting on these projects very early. We do not have a hardcore requirement on market proof. We don't have a mandatory requirement for proof of a platform. We want to know the direction you're planning. If you have a letter of interest, that's enough for us. That's very different than these guys. But so we recognize we're early in, which means our success criteria are not all commercial, but subsequent work is probably the top rung. So a web series that went on to become something else. The most recent example I can think of is How to Buy a Baby, which just got in season 2 of television in Europe. So it got picked up by Warner Brothers in Europe to be turned into 22 minutes. They just funded their second season, so that's a great example of a success story. I'll take Le Killing, which is one of our Francophone projects, very different, where that had some commercial success. It's much more difficult for our Francophone projects to go on and have international success, although it does happen. But almost every member of that team, writers, actors, directors, producers, are now very well established in the Quebec scene, and they're working on television and producing roles and head writer roles, and that came out of their experience in the web series. We consider that a great success, although we're not recouping. Our alumni success is part of that. So and there's people I could think of. There's a woman who was a producer of one of our series a couple of years ago, and I was talking to earlier this year, and she's now a production manager at one of the medium to large size production studios in Toronto. And I said, wow, that's a big job. That's pretty amazing. And were you trained on that? Is that what you're interested in when school? And she's like, that was all producing my web series, because I literally had to do all the jobs. I had to know all these pieces. And I was a little intimidated when I was offered the job. And when I got in, I thought, actually, I totally know how to do all of these things because I did it on my project. So her career, her resume and experience that she gained got her that position, and she's succeeding now, creating bigger productions, documentary and television. So all those pieces, all those little pieces I think are successful examples of why you could apply to us. And
Definitely. So, check out the websites and you'll see examples, and that will guide you as well, I think, in whether you know if your project is suitable. So let's talk about pitching, something I know a little bit about. Suzanne, you don't take pitches, but Robin, you've heard your share of pitches over the years. Can you kind of give us like pitching 101, the do's and the don'ts, what you should do and don't do?
So any pitches I take are informal because we have a board of directors and we have an application process. But, when I'm at an event or, somebody wants to pitch me or we have a phone conversation, being succinct is really important. Sort of knowing how and where you're going to get your financing is really important. Anything you can do that gives me confidence that you can get it financed and deliver what you say you're going to deliver is the most important thing. Creative speaks for itself. And again, I'm not the best person to ask because my pitches are really informal. Yeah.
Informal, but there's certainly, you don't like to be accosted in certain spaces with a pitch.
No.
That's one of the don'ts.
I've heard of stories at Banff years and years and years ago where there were commissioning editors and broadcasters, and people would be like hiding in their hotel rooms. It was, now I don't think it, I think it's easier to get a pitch done, but yeah, like people would be accosted and they'd have to hide.
Pitching, don't pitch me, but I don't have that much control. I administer the team and hire the evaluators, and there's about 30 to 50 people each year that do the evaluations for us, and so it's external from the administrative operations. We're here to help facilitate and connect those dots. However, I do help. I participate in pitch sessions and consultation around applications, and I'm happy at any point to be stopped in the hallway to help you talk about your concept and how you may refine it to be ready to apply. That's no problem. And again, like Suzanne said, we're a very small office, and you can just email us or call us, and I'm happy to give you guys my email address. I'll say it right now. It's jtaylor. It's very simple, at ipf.ca. You can also just email info@ipf.ca, and there's only 4 of us, so one of us will get the email. So do ask questions. That is another common mistake and theme, which is that if you had only asked us, and then after the evaluators have done their job and they've come back and said no, and you're looking saying, oh man, if they had just asked probably those 2 questions, we probably would have said, don't do this, or skip that part, and then they would have been okay. So you can totally ask us prior to applying. You should totally go to Bellefon's webinar. Those things before you apply are better than trying to do it in a vacuum and then afterwards learning. So you can learn a lot in the application process as opposed to just afterwards.
What gets you excited about a pitch?
Oh man, so the best part about working in the short form digital series is what really works for that particular format is a very narrowly focused audience. So do not come with your television half-hour thing that you're going to fit into a 15-minute episode. It should be something that is unique and has this really perspective and a certain voice that's maybe not common, etc. And so these things that work. So which is why I'm surprised, and it's part of the best part of our job every year is seeing what crazy, interesting zeitgeist ideas come. We have no limitations on animation. We've funded puppets. We fund all sorts of Mac en Plus, which is one of the French projects.
Are the puppets the applicants?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, they're not the applicants. No, but they could be. They could be. But they had very good commercial success. It went around the world as a short form series. It got picked up by television stations around the world and won festivals. And so I would have never thought there was a musical it was like Glee horror. Like it was a high school murder, blood fest, something. No puppets in that one. People watching, I bring this up, it's probably 5 years old now, but it was a really, really unique animated series that Sony Crackle picked up, and I think they were trying to turn it into half hours for Adult Swim, and so it was just this unique concept, and all of these ideas, I do sometimes selfishly think if those had gone through a different process and a more traditional funding process versus what you could get maybe in the smaller fund, they wouldn't have had that weird, unique flavor that actually was their secret sauce. And so I don't know what I'm excited about, because every year I look forward to seeing what you guys bring to me. I don't know what genres are popular. I would have not thought that was popular, and then all of a sudden it's in the zeitgeist and it's happening, and I'm behind the curve. So it's up to you. You tell me what we should be funding, because there's so many unique ideas and voices out there.
I just wanted to add one. At I think our last round, I had a call from somebody, first-time applicant, emerging creator from BC, and I was trying to understand, what kind of content it was. Do you have a host? Do you have a star? Who's, and he said, no, it's fingers, and she was like, okay. It's a dramatic series, and the actors, it's my fingers, and it's my partner's fingers. And he got funded. It's called 5 Fingers of Fury, and it's a whole dramatic, everything's done with the fingers and faces, emotions on the fingers. Huge TikTok following, so TikTok is the channel that they went with. But there's an example of super creative, super strong creatives, hopefully a lower budget price point as well for that one. But that's an example of, it was still, but they had that following. They had a TikTok channel that had hundreds of thousands of followers for that content. So we knew there was a market out there. There is an audience. They know that audience. So
think of it this way: there's a lot of push on discoverability, which is marketing, but part of the process you want to do with the development and in your first season of web series creation is that audience development. So you really want to narrow your audience down. It's better, in my opinion, to have kind of this defined 500 to 1,000 people, and you know exactly who they are. You can write their thing. You have a lot of details on those people, because digital platforms will find them, and in your partner conversations, you know exactly who your audience is. So that proof of concept video that we fund, and sometimes your first season, is actually about finding that and defining that person that is your audience member. And the reason that 5 Fingers of Fury would be popular, because there is 1,000 people in every city around the world who think that's funny, and when you add all that up, it's 1 million people. And so it's this weird. I remember when I worked at Gova, and we had regular sessions with YouTube, and we would ask them what works on YouTube, and they said at the same time, we have no idea. Like, we thought this would be successful, and it's not, and we thought this is totally going to bomb, and it totally took off. So their whole point is just try it, and let's see what happens. And so somewhere out there, if you define your audience narrowly focused and have a really unique concept, it may land with its audience, and that's how you find that zeitgeist.
I'm going to give the last word to Robin, and then we're going to open it up for questions.
I just wanted to say that in my very long career, I've had 2 pitches that have made me cry. Yeah, and I'll never forget them. So they were good pitches, yeah. They made me cry.
There's a couple of the big pitches that were powerful.
Yeah,
powerful.
definitely.
I felt some emotions.
Okay, so we have some time for questions. Sophia will come to you with the microphone. So we'll start right here.
Thank you. Robin, I just want to go back to the point where you said you accept 2 applications per producer. Is that per project or per lifetime?
Oh, no. That's per project. So you can apply twice with the same project, but if you have 5 projects, you can apply at one deadline. Yeah, bring them all. I always encourage producers to, if you have 3 projects, apply with all 3, because then we're looking at sort of a body of work. We're looking at this person's busy, and you're probably going to be lucky with 1, sometimes 2, depending on the deadline. Oh no, but I mean, I've had producers who have, I've funded, in the course of 25 years, I've funded 20 of their projects easily. So keep coming, just not more than twice with the same project.
I have a question in the front.
Oh, that was me. Hi, my name is Chibi Louis Okoye. My question's to all of you. So, but mostly to John Taylor. You talked about a short web series, and the range for the grant is pretty wide, 30 to 200. And you've talked about fingers and things like that could make the cut. And I was thinking of Marcel the L with shoes on or something. I don't know if you know about that one. So it's more, if we were to come to you and you saw a certain potential in the project, do you prevent, or is there a limitation to go get additional funds from another funder for an even higher budget if we find after the fact that, you know, something has happened along the road and we need more money? Because we're not going to come back to you for the same grant for the same project, right? So how do we navigate that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and an opportunity to correct my fumbling definition of our funds. So the 30,000 is for development, and that's one deadline. So you would apply with your concept, and that money would be spent to create your proof of concept video, to write scripts, to create your Bible, create a budget and a schedule for production, so that you apply for production, of which we are one of a few places you can apply for web series production. And we fund $200,000 at the production deadline. So there are two different deadlines. You get $30,000 for development, and then if you were successful, you would get another $200,000 for production. Yeah, and $30,000, I believe we're the only one. CMF partners with us on that program, so they basically double our money. But right now, we're the only fund that's offering development money, and that's a $30,000 grant. It's actually a repayable loan, so it's not even it's a grant. When you go to production, whether it's us or someone else, you basically put development money in your budget, and then you can pay us back. What was what was the second question? Now I've clarified. Yes, got it. Thank you. So we expect you to go and ask for more money. There was a time, maybe 7 years ago, 5 years ago, where you could make a web series for $200,000. You really can't now. We don't see those budgets. Small budget web series for like your first season, 60, 90 minutes worth of content. So these are broken into 10, 15 minute chunks, etc. 400,000, 400, under $500,000, you have to have it, you're tight. You have to have that content works that way. We see budgets now that are up above $1 million, which is high. You need to have all your funding dominoes come in because you're pulling in every single one of the funders that actually offer it. So you got to be successful in every application. Plus you're pulling in a pretty big tax credit at that point. And so we're fine with that. It's no problem. We've funded projects that are going for $800 to $1 million worth of financing, and we're the first one in. But at that point, when you apply to us, you are stating, you know where you're going to get all the money. It's not confirmed yet. We're often the first one in to be confirmed, and then kind of your vote of confidence to go get it. If it falls through, it totally happens. It falls through, you contact us and say, I didn't get this fund, I'm working XYZ way to work, and maybe my platform's going to come through for me and up their license fee. And so what we do, you're basically just asking us for more time. When you contract with us, there's a certain period of time we kind of expect you to come through. We don't just want money sitting in the books for years and years and years, but we offer an extension to say, yep, it sounds like you're still hustling and it's going to get done, and we believe in you. And so you can, after the fact, change how your financing structure works. We can't contract you until everything's confirmed, but it just means we're still voting in confidence with you. We just can't hand you your money yet from us, if that clarifies. Yeah. So then you have an interim financing challenge. Yeah. So you're going to state to us your financing plan. We're going to say that's feasible or not. Yes, we're going to get, but it has to be confirmed before we cut you a check. And so at which point, excluding development is just between you and us. But so then the longer it takes you to get your financing together, how are you getting paid? How is the team coming together, et cetera. So that's that dance.
I just wanted to add, John, that Bell Fund also would support, say, a web series in development through our Slate development program.
Totally. Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, all good. So, but you would be coming with 2 or 3 projects in a slate from your company. So you'd have to have at least 2 in development in order to apply. But yeah, typically we do see web series, TV series, even documentary one-offs can come through that program.
That's a great point, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, in Ontario, Creates does have concept development. They do a lot of video games, but I think some web series do get in there too. So I will stop saying that we're the only ones.
Okay, so I'm getting the cat finger. Don't give me the finger. But apparently, I think we're out of time, sadly. But
I'll be outside.
yeah,
I'll hang out
our
for a bit.
panelists have made it very clear that they're very accessible. Reach out to them if you have any questions. Go to their websites, send an email, set up an appointment, watch the webinars, read the guidelines, and apply. So thank you for coming this morning. I hope that it was informative, you learned something, and good luck with all your filmmaking.
Thank you.